So today we're talking plum and apricot pruning. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here on a cool morning in January of 2024. So if you guys have been following us along, you know that we have a newly established functioning farm here in the Arizona desert, and we have got a lot of fruit trees here on the farm. 180 plus actually. So this time of year, that means a whole lot of pruning, and one of the types of trees that we love would be our stone fruit. And today, we're gonna be showing you how we prune our apricots and plums and why it's a little different from the peaches that you guys normally see. So tools that we're using for today are the ones we pretty much always use. I've got my handy dandy Corona pruners here. These are really my go-to for hand pruners. I have some loppers you might see me using today, a handsaw possibly, maybe a Sawzall, and maybe even a brand new pruner of mine. We're gonna go ahead and get started on this first tree. What you're gonna see me pruning here is one of our apriums. So this is an apricot plum hybrid. It's predominantly apricot in its heritage, and we'll kind of show you some things that make it a little bit different. So the first thing I do on every stone fruit that I'm pruning is I open up my harvesting notch. The way I'm looking right at you guys would be facing northeast. So my harvesting notch, which is opening up the middle of the tree and allowing me to get in to do harvesting on the inside, this is actually facing the northeast. So it's not getting direct sun exposure most of the day. First thing I'm gonna do is get in here, open up the middle, because this is an open center tree. I want to point something out real quick first. This cut right here that I made last year. So this was a large branch we took off. This is the harvesting notch that I'm in now. These are all branches that have grown from that cut last year. Now this branch in particular, this thing is pushing about 5 feet tall, might even be a little bit taller than that. Almost perfectly vertical growth right here in the middle of the tree. One of the great parts about the apricot trees is they do grow very, very quickly, so we can be a little more aggressive with our pruning cuts. But wanted to show you guys that here before I made this cut. So one of the reasons why I like this open center design and also having this harvesting notch, as I get in here and start my pruning, I can really get a good idea of what this tree is gonna look like, both on the inside and the out. I know that I wanna be able to get in here to harvest, but at the same time, as this tree continues to get bigger, I also wanna make sure that I have plenty of production as I move to the outside of the tree and do some additional pruning. Now, there's actually something about apricots and plums that's very important to know as you're here working on the middle of the tree and you see all these wonderful little branches. That's one of the most important things. You may be wondering why I'm not snipping this branch off. There's actually a reason. These are actually fruiting spurs. You get your peaches on growth from last year only. That's where all of your peach production occurs here the following year. That's not the case with your apricots and your plums. Both of them will actually have fruiting spurs. Now, several of these could be branches that are gonna pop out, but some I know are fruiting spurs. So I don't wanna go snipping all of these little tiny branches off because I'll lose all of my production. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave all of these here and start working on some of my larger branching. So decided to switch to my DeWalt pruners. I'll tell you what, these things have really become my favorite tool when getting this work done. Now, there's a little weight to it, but I'm not having to do this over and over and over again, so love this guy. I've got a little bit of a before and after this tree. You get an idea of how much material we took off of this going on about a 4-year-old tree now. Key things here are the same as anything else. Any dead or dying branches, any branches that are crossing, any branches that are pointing straight down, all of those get removed. If I'm gonna be topping a branch, I'm looking for an outward facing bud to allow the tree to continue to grow nice and wide. And you can see this tree is doing wonderful as far as that's concerned. And then I'm looking for balance in the tree. A shot of this tree from the top, you'll see that I have very even balancing as far as the scaffold branches are concerned. And this tree, I think, is ready to go. So you guys are basically in our harvesting notch, so probably can clear this out a little bit more, but you saw me taking out a lot of material here in the middle of this tree. This is a plum cherry hybrid, our Sat Lap. It's a Satsuma plum Lapins cherry hybrid. We get this from Reed at RSI Growers. Wonderful fruit. We got fruit for last year for the first time. But this is a mainly plum parentage, and cherries are much like this as well. So just like your apricot trees, we have some fruiting spurs that are starting to develop here in the middle of the tree. So I was very careful as I was taking some of these out to not take out where I'm going to be getting fruit this year, which is on these spurs. So again, remember, plums, apricots, cherries, these are things that actually develop fruiting spurs. That's where your fruit develops. You don't want to cut these off when you're pruning. So now another thing about plums, apricots have a tendency to grow nice and wide for you very easily. Plums, not so much. So I really need to focus on getting this tree to grow out versus straight up, which is what it wants to do. So this will give you an idea of just how nice and wide we're starting to get this tree to develop. Again, we have our fruiting spurs down here. All of that cutting will encourage the tree to put on some additional fruiting spurs and give us more and more fruit. Now, we do have one more plum I want to show you. So the tree you just watched us prune is our Burgundy Plum. Again, you can see how vertical this tree was growing right from the center. So we clear this out every year to make sure we have a nice open center. There's a lot of production on this tree. The fruit's a little smaller, but it really overproduces. So needed to thin it out quite a bit. Again, we need to encourage it to grow wide. It wants to grow real narrow. And I have my fruiting spurs in here. So we're still gonna have plenty of production as we continue to train this tree to be nice and wide. We wanted to make sure that we covered apricots, plums, and cherries, and the hybrids thereof, to make sure you guys knew that you have fruiting spurs with these, which you don't have with peaches, just to make sure that you guys are gonna get a nice strong harvest come spring. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. We cover a lot of things here on this newly established functioning farm in the Arizona desert and would love to see you on a regular basis. If you have any questions or comments, those go in the comments section down below. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That's a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with the link down below, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you.
Noah, what are you doing, baby girl?